Howdy, CvCISO Podcast listeners. Welcome to episode 27 of the CvCISO Podcast. This is the second take. That's why you hear Jordon giggling a little bit in the background. The first one, I think I almost maybe had a stroke as I was trying to do the introduction. But we're good.
I mean, honestly, I don't think you nailed that one, so I might have to do this one again, too.
Yeah, I guess it's relative.
I mean, we're already off on the wrong track, right? You got to start with a perfect introduction.
Okay. Okay,
nah,
hold on.
It's just going. Take two.
Welcome, CvCISO Podcast listeners. Welcome to episode 27 of the CvCISO Podcast. We're glad you're here. Joining me today is Meg and Jordon, my co-host. I'm so happy to be here. Meg, Jordon, say hi.
Hello. Is that positive enough, Jordon?
Yeah.
Hi.
All right.
I am so happy to be here with you guys.
I am also happy to be here with you as well, Jordon and Meg.
Life is
and
just
myself.
Life is a bed of roses.
Bed of roses without the thorns, I assume.
With the rose petals.
Okay, so laying in a bed of roses minus the thorn.
Yeah, this podcast is now becoming very quickly a bed of thorny roses in a dumpster fire.
We don't want stems in the bed either.
Okay, so no stems, no thorns, and no fire in my bed.
That's right.
What's in your bed?
I don't know. I'll have to go check. But now I have a checklist. So if I wanted to maintain compliance with Jordon's requirements, I would have to create my checklist, go in there, and check off the boxes, like most people do security, by the way.
There you go.
No, seriously.
It always comes back to security.
Are you guys happy right now? Are you happy? I've been feeling down in the dumps, and you guys are already making me happier. Just
You've been smiling since you got on here.
Well, that's because you guys make me smile. You know, it's important.
Nice.
What have you been down on the dumps about, Jordon? Is there anything you'd like to speak about publicly on the podcast?
No. I mean, there's some stuff that maybe I won't share publicly, but you know, it's a lot of things. You know, I don't know. It's just lots going on. You know, and sometimes when you feel like you're not executing at a high level and you don't feel like you have time to kind of recoup. I don't know. It's kind of that stuff.
All right. Well, I'm always down in the dumps if that's how we're going to measure this. I never feel like I'm on my A game, and I'm always overwhelmed. So, are you picking into my brain right now, Jordon?
I might be.
Holy crap! I feel you.
Don't you think some of that's like the remote working stuff?
You think that about me?
Sorry.
You can't unthink it now.
Suppress the thoughts. Suppress the thoughts.
You can't unthink it.
What are we gonna?
What
are we gonna say, Meg?
I said, don't you think some of that is the remote working stuff? I mean, it's very different working remotely than it is going to brick and mortar. I know that's not our topic, but
yeah,
sure. Isn't Meg strip?
Oh yeah, something in Morty.
Oh, man, I can't remember. One of our listeners will have to tell us.
Comic strip.
Rick and Morty.
All right. Well,
Rick and Morty. It's Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty. That's really close to brick and mortar.
Or
is there some kind of play on that? All right. Well, the listeners are probably all tuned out now because we haven't even come back. We haven't come close to the topic. So the topic is my topic this week, and me being ultra prepared as always, I thought, well, let's give some tips on how vCISOs can overcome objections, assuming, because there's lots of different places in a relationship you can have objections. Here it's, let's say I'm hired as your vCISO and I'm working, and our job is to consult the business to make good information security risk decisions as, job number one. And let's say we're running into all kinds of objections. So what are some tips, some practical tips that we can come up with to help vCISOs navigate and overcome objections? What do you think? Want to talk about that?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So you say, hey, you gotta, I recommend you use MFA. And they say, no effing way. I'm not using MFA.
Right. MFA. I ain't using no MF and A. I use the MF, but I ain't going with the A. Well, here's an example. So let's say a CFO objects to increased security spending, right? They don't want to spend money. They're already spending money on the vCISO. What's going to happen is you're going to do your information security risk assessment, probably, and then you're going to find a whole bunch of risks that need to be attended to. You'll make recommendations. They'll make the risk decisions, and some of that stuff is going to cost money. And so the CFO says, I don't want to spend any more money. And it may stem, from their lack of understanding about return on investment or, potential risk exposure without the investment. So let's tackle that first, because there's one key word I used in that example, and the key word was or, believe it or not, where the CFO, it may be because of lack of ROI. What's the ROI in spending more money on information security? Potentially, they don't understand the risk exposure without the investment. And so the hint is or. What are some good tips in just maybe that example?
Well, if you're unsure of the ROI, shouldn't you do a cost-benefit analysis just to understand? Maybe. I think that'll help answer both the either or.
Well, I think one of the things that I've caught myself doing many times is, in order for me to overcome the objection, I need to understand with more clarity what the actual objection is. And so I think in this particular example, because I like your answer too, I think that's totally legit. Like, is it this or is it that? But I think in generic terms, general terms, as a vCISO, we need to understand the objection's root cause. So that would be my first tip is, what is the root cause? Because it may be that, it may be ROI, it may be not understanding the risk exposure without the investment, but it might also be, those might all just be, bullshit. Sometimes it's people are reluctant to change. Sometimes people, there's lots of reasons. So my first tip would be to understand the objection's root cause. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah.
100%.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to, what I keep thinking is that it still goes back to something that we talk about a lot, which is, using, understanding definitions of things, understanding what we're actually talking about. If you're not on the same page, and I was almost thinking, even going back a step, why did you bring me on as your vCISO to begin with? What was the point of me being here? How much money were you willing to invest in this endeavor? And then understand the objection once they have a specific one. But if I don't even know why you want me here too.
Yeah, that might be, you hit on another key point, right? ROI, risk of what's the exposure without the investment, but then, even bringing it back maybe further than that, do you not find me credible? And you may not be able to come right out. It depends on the relationship. I may not be able to come right out and say that, but through digging, it's the same thing. And there's so many parallels between information security and just life. My own wife might have an objection to me getting a new motorcycle. Well, why? Well, because it's too much money. Well, let's dig into that a little bit more. Or is it because you're afraid I'm going to, wrap myself around a tree? Or, it's really important, I think, to get to that root cause so then you can address specifically that root cause. And once you adequately address that root cause, there might be another one that exposes itself. But I think you just continue to, tackle those root causes and try to keep it logical. Don't get emotional, because you're rarely going to solve an objection just through anger, frustration, fear.
Yeah.
Well, and think of the benefit of that too, because if you don't get to the clear root cause, then no matter what, even if you somehow convince them to spend the money, that objection isn't solved yet. If you didn't actually have an understanding of what it was to begin with, and there's nothing worse than having objections kind of lingering under the surface that just never got put to bed.
Yeah. And I always go back to that why. I think I remember when I was a kid, I would always ask why. I was always curious, why? And, I think parents back in, when I was growing up, it was often, they encourage you to stop asking why. Because I told you so, because I said so. Where, we should encourage people to always ask why, because that leads to that critical thinking. It leads to identifying root causes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, you're in Minnesota, Jordon, and Meg, you're in Wisconsin. And Minnesota is like probably both of you guys in those communities. You guys are so well known for passive aggressive. You ever notice that, like, where people don't tell you what they really think? And so I feel like, you really think that? And you kind of have to dig in a little bit more and find out, no, actually, I thought you liked me, but you don't like me.
The amount of times I've lost a sale, like the last meeting I left going, oh, they loved me. This is in the bag. And then you get an email later, we're going with someone else. Like, completely different than what you were, like when I was face to face with you.
Like, yeah. And why? Why did you go with somebody else? And you won't get, and at least in Minnesota, from my experience, why? Why didn't you give me the business? What was it? And they won't tell me. Or they'll make up some crap, well, because it was a better fit. Well, what does that mean? Better fit?
Right.
Cheaper? More skilled? Better looking? I mean, what was it? All right. So number one is understand the objections root cause. Number two, for tips for vCISOs in overcoming objections is, and these are things that I've found useful in my own practice. Number two is frame security in business terms. I think oftentimes
make it relatable.
There's this wall between security and business. Like, there's no business benefit to some of these recommendations you're making, or, whatever. And I think a lot of it probably comes down to our poor choice of language. When we explain something to, an executive or the business, we're using words that we're normally speaking, like threat actors or zero trust architecture or whatever the hell we're using. And I think you're bound to get objections. But when you can put it in their terms, I use the example of speak the language of business. And the language of business, according to that really smart guy out of Omaha, is accounting. And so if I can put information security somehow into, so there's an objection to this particular thing that I'm recommending, but if I can put it in terms of how it's going to serve our mission more, how we're going to get more customers, how we're going to make more money, top line, bottom line, if I can put it into a perspective of it's going to make our employees safer, that's very powerful, and it's hard to overcome that. But you have to be able to break it down. And I can't do that for sure if I didn't start with identifying that root cause. So what do you guys think about that? Framing security in business terms.
I think that's part of building the culture. And if you have an entire culture of information security and the importance of it, the more likely you're going to get the support that you need from the top.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. If it's so logical where you can make the case that this results in that, and that's a desirable outcome,
right?
And the logic is there, and with as much certainty as possible, so you've taken probability and chance out of it, it becomes this, like, almost to them, to everybody in the room, it becomes stupid if you don't do it.
Right.
You can make it that obvious, then the hell.
Yeah, that.
Then you get objections from everyone. People are, why aren't we doing this?
Yeah,
it's a little more pressure from below.
And you think about, like, when people go into business, they're passionate about something. They're passionate about the mission. They want to grow, make money, provide for people's families as you're getting employees. And so, it's 100% correct that accounting is the language of business. They're not, that's the reason that they're doing it. And it goes beyond that. It's not like just, money. It's providing and it's growing and making a difference. And that is the accounting and the finances is a part of that, right? And and so I think one of the first things that I connected with when I started getting to know you, Evan, and FR Secure and Security Studio and everything was when you framed it as, if you only had $1 to spend, what's your most significant risk to spend it on? That's what I'm here to help you understand. And like that clicked immediately. I was like, yeah, that's the value. That's what they're listening to. They might not always know, like, okay, I know I have to spend money on security. You know, I know there's threats out there. I have a general understanding of this. And when you start talking to them about spending their money wisely, you're going to spend money. You might as well spend it properly on your most significant risk. I mean, that's a logical connection that I think everyone would agree with. If you're going to spend something, if you're going to spend your personal family budget on something, you want to make sure it's being spent on the biggest impact and stuff like that.
I love, and that's, you know, one of the reasons, there's many reasons why I love talking to you guys, but one of those is you remind me of things, you know, because I haven't used that phrase in a long time, but I think it's a very logical and powerful phrase. And the phrase is, you know, where do I spend my next information security dollar? You know, I don't want to spend it in a place where everybody else is spending it because they have different businesses, different people, different technologies, different everything. I don't want to spend it. I don't want to misspend it. I would rather, as a security person who's been doing this a really long time, I would rather not spend any dollars than misspend a single dollar on information security, because those misspent dollars, not only are they a waste of money, but they also often lead to a false sense of security. And the most important tool I have as a security person is situational awareness. And so if I've spent money thinking that, well, okay, that's covered, but it's not, well, then I'm not even looking there anymore, right? So then when that does hypothetical thing gets compromised, I wasn't looking that way, so I won't detect it. Or if I do detect it, it won't be until they get over here where I am actually looking. And by then the response is, you know, a lot more expensive. So, I mean, yeah, I love the fact that you reminded me of that truth. That's awesome. Number three on my list is use risk-based language. Now, as an information security person, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, information security risk. That's fine. I mean, we're passionate about information security. So we have a tendency sometimes to think that information security risk is the risk. It's never the risk, it's a risk. So big difference. But business people are always thinking risk. They're thinking financial risk, compliance risk, reputational risk, on, market risk. This is just another risk. Use risk-based language, likelihood, impact, translate these things. That usually helps quite a bit too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we talk about that in the class of making sure you're speaking the same language. And if you put risk into context, you talk about that all the time. Putting risk into context, you know, they can relate to other forms of risk a lot more easily than many times they can relate to information security risk. So if you help them understand how they intersect, then I think you can have more luck with getting their trust, having credibility in what you're trying to accomplish. And I think trust is a big piece here too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, maybe it's a trust
on my
issue.
List. It's coming up.
Is it? Okay.
No, you're dead on.
The other thing with risk, I think, for the vCISO to understand too, that as you're providing these consultations, the business owner, sometimes business owners are risk takers. You know, that's part of what got them into starting a business, is that they, you know, I mean, everyone's different. Every business owner is different. Some are more calculated and, you know, conservative, but oftentimes they're going to be risk takers. And so, you know, sometimes you can present it. Your job is to to put the risk in context and communicate it clearly. And they might be willing to accept the risk. And sometimes you got to disconnect from that. I mean, depending on what it is and what your own values are that you have to, you know, live with, and whose name is on it, but it's their business. Like sometimes you know, as an MSP, sometimes I'll have the help desk guys talking to me because security comes up. And even though we're not like necessarily doing security consultations. We do get asked for it and we do provide it, but they'll say, hey, this guy wants to do this, and I don't think that's a good idea. And I end up applying the same principles that we learn in vCISO, where I'm like, all right, well, your job is to consult them on the risk, explain and educate the risk, but it's their business. They get to accept the risk. Your job is just to make sure it's very clear that that's what they're doing and what they're accepting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you touched on one coming up on the list too. So Meg touched on one that was, trust. And trust and credibility are really close to each other. So that's coming up on the list. And you touched on, I think what I got out of what you said, Jordon, was emotional intelligence. Detaching yourself from this and, reminding yourself why you're actually here. And if they make a bad risk decision, obviously we don't want that, but it's not my decision. And so that takes some emotional intelligence to separate yourself from that, especially if you're a small business owner like I am and like you are. It's no, man, I would never do that. Well, I'm not doing that in my business, but it's your business. So far we have number 1 was understand the objections root cause. Number 2, frame security in business terms. Number 3 was use risk-based language. Number 4 is leverage data and case study. Data, I've always liked data. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand the difference between data and information.
Mm-hmm.
Data is just, it's numbers, observations, something that represents whatever it was associated with, right? It's the thing with data is there's no interpretation of data. An interpretation of data is information. So different, but when you're leveraging data, that's factual information, it gives me confidence as a vCISO, because if I'm giving you my opinion, especially if I don't have, I can only imagine newer vCISOs or, back when I was newer in this industry, I didn't have the confidence, that I have today. That confidence comes with experience. And there are many times when I've been objected to, and I was using my opinion. And that's a much tougher spot to come from than if I have data, case studies, examples to back me up where I can say, that's fine, but here's what the data says, right? This is, what's coming at us, in terms of threats. This is what the vulnerabilities are. When we marry these two together, this is what it looks like. And, being able to point to other organizations, there's 3 other organizations in our same industry who, without this one control in place, suffered in this way. So I like leveraging data and case studies, and that's what I have for number 4. It's hard to object to it.
Right.
What you can object to, by the way, you can't object to the data, but you can object to information. You can object to, and this is just something you get careful doing as a vCISO. You can also object to my conclusions that I drew from the data. The further you get from the data, the less defensible it can become. That makes sense.
Yeah. More subjective it is.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, that's very crystal clear when you can provide the data to back it up, and it's just staring them in the face. And again, it's being clear about what the risk is and why you're giving that consultation. I respect people that are big data guys and detail oriented. We just did for our leadership team, we did a Kobe test. I think I showed you started doing one. I don't know if you finished it, but one point I wanted to kind of bring up with this is that everyone kind of is different. Everyone approaches tasks and decisions differently. And I discovered about myself that I am someone who can take kind of a summary of information and am good with making a decision off of just like a handful of points. And then we have other people on our leadership team that are big data people. Like they need to see all the data. They need to really get in there and come to that conclusion with all that. And so you'll be dealing with different people. So some people you might be able to say, hey, here's the context of the risk. Oh, go for it. Yeah, I understand. I trust. And then some people will be like, no, they're going to need you to get that data. And if you're not that data guy, it might be hard for you. It would be hard for me to do that. to come back with a huge
Repertoire.
data-driven
Right.
reason. So I need people to help me with that.
Well, and you
That's
hit on
what's
another
cool
thing
about the
too that I
community.
preach a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. Meg, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's what's cool about the community within the CvCISO program is that you have access to lots of minds, lots of experience, and can maybe utilize them to come up with data.
Well, you guys hit on a really important thing, and I've been learning more and more about this. It seems like weekly how important other perspectives are.
Right.
I make much better decisions when I have context. And in order for me to get context, I need different perspectives. It's that simple. So, and that's actually not on my list, but maybe I'll add that to my list. It's entertaining other perspectives, because when you talk about leveraging data, you and I can both look at the same exact data and come to completely different conclusions from that same data.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when data transforms from data to information, and then your own conclusions are drawn from that. So leveraging the data, but be able to draw those lines between conclusions or recommendations and the data. Then also be open to the fact, and this is another one on my list, anticipating objections early. Understand that this is the conclusion I drew, but anticipate objections to it. What if somebody saw it different? What if they said this? Can I defend my conclusion? And two, can I either invalidate theirs, which there's politically correct ways to do that, right? You don't want to make people feel stupid, but we're saying things from totally different angles. So either I need to be able to bring your perspective into the argument and use it for myself, or invalidate your perspective, be able to challenge it. One of the things we know, or I know about people who can't defend their point, is they change the subject or they attack character, usually.
Mm.
And that goes to the emotional intelligence thing that's coming up too. It's, can I defend my point, my conclusions, my recommendation without changing the subject, without, it would be stupid to attack somebody's character,
Yeah.
call a CEO stupid. That probably won't work for
Probably wouldn't get you far.
No, probably not.
What do you think?
But they will do, but it's not uncommon for that to come back my way. I mean, I've been called incompetent. I don't think I've ever been called stupid. I've been called lots of words that were actually just objections where somebody couldn't make a point. You're not actually attacking the character.
Do you have thick skin in those situations, or does that sometimes get through the armor?
I think over the years, my skin got thicker. I think in the earlier days, it would definitely affect me more. Nowadays, it doesn't affect me at all, really. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one is just wisdom. Over the years, you just learn how to handle it more. The first time you ever handle anything, the first time you ever create anything or do something the first time, it's probably going to be crappy. So I think one is just wisdom. Two is, I think, my own perspective. There's a lot of people in your life, a lot of people in my life, and most of those people really don't matter what they think about me.
Yeah.
Plus it's work. I mean, and if there was something to it, like, Evan, you're an asshole, and you gave me examples, I'm like, I can't deny. I'm like, crap, I am. I need to change. I don't know. That goes, I think, a lot to the emotional intelligence piece too.
Yeah.
What I love about
this
you?
is not an emotional. I don't need to get that. There are other customers. I used to get like this with objection after objection after objection after objection with, a company that I was consulting or somebody I was working for, and thinking of you view it as like a challenge. Well, maybe if I positioned it this way, maybe if I, communicated it that way or whatever. And then you realize that sometimes there's just incompetent management that you're working with that will never get it. And it's not my problem. I'm looking for a way to not work with them anymore. So I go not continue to beat my head against the wall.
I want to go down this rabbit trail of Jordon saying, you know what I love about you, and then having a really big shit-ass grin on his face.
What's that?
I have like
What is it?
3 things I want. I got to juggle in my head right now because I have a question I want to ask. But no, I was just gonna say that you know what I love about you, Evan?
What's that?
I don't even know why I'm laughing. I just know it's just funny. You're just funny because you're. I've noticed that you have like you could be a random question that you weren't expecting, and you'll find a way to logically order it in your head and be like, well, here's the answer to that. Number 1, and number 2, and number 3. And like, I mean, obviously you had ideas for this podcast, but like even just in like I just notice it a lot. You'll take even spontaneous information and somehow come back with, oh, here's the answer. Number 1, 2, and 3. And you'll have like bullet points, and it's awesome.
You should have been a preacher.
Well, and I always encourage people too, like, don't take what anybody's telling you at face value unless it validates something you already knew. Like, so if you ask me a question and I come up with an answer, challenge it. You should challenge it, right? Because it might be wrong, and last thing I want to be is wrong, because I need to kind of be safe from myself too, right? When you say something, like if I'm preaching this thing over and over and over again and you're like, that's wrong. It's like, oh shit.
Right.
I have a lot of undoing to do on this point. So
yeah, sometimes I'm formulating my thought as I'm giving it. And so if I see a bunch of people going, yeah, then I walk away going, yeah, that was a pretty smart answer. Right. And if in their head they're saying, no, what an idiot. Like that was a horrible answer.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, like, when you've given a talk and the whole audience is agreeing with you, they're doing this? Because I got upset when there was a talk I was giving to a bunch of FBI. There was the FBI one where I was talking about asset management and how important it is, and everybody's doing that. And I'm like, you're just teasing me because you're doing this because you agree with me, but you're not actually doing it. It's like totally different, And so, yeah, you're right. Asset management, you got to do it. Well, any of you guys doing this? Are any of you guys doing this? Yeah, show me. I don't want to.
Quick question on the just kind of wrapping up the multiple perspectives thing. What do you think of a practical tactic of, you're presenting your consultation, and as I'm thinking about perspectives, I started thinking, if you could prepare enough to come with multiple solutions, almost thinking like here's one way that you could mitigate it. Here's one way you could, avoid it. Here's one way you could transfer it. Here's one way you could accept it, or, whatever. Like if you could come with and kind of leave, when I did sales training a long time ago, like I learned the PAS technique. So you set up the problem, you talk through alternatives, and you talk through why those alternatives are maybe not the best answer, and then you present your solution at the end. And it made me think of that in this outcome. Like you set up the risk, you talk through, here's all the alternatives that you could do to approach this, and here's reasons why maybe I think those aren't the best. And then finally, and here's mine, and then you almost give them a choice of things. And if they don't want your solution, maybe at least now they have an idea of, if you don't want to spend money on this, here's something you could do. What do you think of
that? Jordon, your middle name has now become Oracle. because number 5 on my list is be flexible, offer alternatives.
I've just been doing this podcast with you for how many 1,000 episodes that you must have just.
I'm telling you, man. I did not share it. So any of the listeners, I didn't share this list. I'm actually created it, a little bit before, and that's number 5. Just be flexible, offer alternatives. So come into, something like this if you can anticipate objections early, and you should know that, right? Based on your relationship with the person. Like, I know the objections I'm going to get from my wife well before I'm ever going to bring something to her. Pay attention, right? Read the room. If I go to my wife and say, hey, honey, I want to get a new motorcycle. Did I expect no objections? That would actually scare me. That would really scare me if she's, yeah, go get it. What?
You'd be like, wait a minute,
probably,
what happened to the life insurance policy?
Yeah. But so if you anticipate that there's going to be objections, which there probably will, and if there isn't, then great, you got your thing. That's awesome. Move forward if it's already obvious or whatever. But to your point, Jordan, I think it's fantastic to be flexible, be creative, think of other alternatives. So if we can't put this particular control in place, what are some other mitigating controls that we can put in place? So budget is an issue. Maybe we phase the implementation over a longer period of time, or maybe we repurpose existing resources to get the same effect, right? So think of these different alternatives. That's number 5. So you're pretty damn good, Jordan.
Man, yeah, no, that was your point.
Well, my point, you brought it up.
I
Number
feel like
6.
Meg was thinking it.
Well, here's one that Meg was thinking. So number 6 on my list, because Meg brought up trust, number 6 is build credibility. And the best way to build credibility is quick wins. Because credibility takes a track record. It's like trust, right? It just, can this person actually fulfill what they say? Can they actually do what they say they can do? All those things. And the quickest way to do that is quick wins, right? So if I'm a vCISO and I'm doing, I've completed my information security risk assessment. If you were paying attention during the assessment itself, there was a whole bunch of opportunities for quick wins just in doing the assessment. Like consulting people, asking you questions, engaging, personality. Just in the assessment, you can build tons of credibility in those little quick wins that don't seem like quick wins for you, but they really are. When you're talking to people, answering their questions, a lot of times in an assessment, like, why is that a big deal? Like, well, let me explain it to you. And they're like, yeah, I never saw it that way. Quick win. Brownie points, suck those things up. You've ever done this? I do this with my wife. They say you're not supposed to keep score, but I do. I'm winning. I'm totally beating her right now. If this was a game.
I think that's more a male thing for some reason. My husband does that too.
Whatever, Meg, I'm beating it. So. No, but like I always think of like when I lead my teams at FR Secure and Secure Studio as we continue to build how that's going to look. Like political capital. I only have so much political capital. And the way I make deposits in my political capital account is by encouraging, empowering, most of those things. I think in agreements. So when you empower somebody to do something and then they come to you and you agree with it and you know what I mean, you buy in. Those are all little deposits that I make in my political capital thing. I spend political capital when I overrule you, I disagree with you, I take responsibilities away from you, I don't deliver on things. So that's why I have no political capital with Meg right now because she's waiting for CvCISO. I mean, I get that, but the same thing with this credibility. I have a credibility account. I always just kind of view it this way. And some of my customers over the years have viewed me as being much more credible than others. So when I kind of like was keeping score mentally of, does this customer seem as credible? No, maybe, or I could put more money, I could put more credibility in that account. That's when I'm looking for those quick wins. Like, what can I do these guys to win 5 things, put some deposits in there. And now when I come with that big recommendation, that one that I really know I'm going to need the credibility, a lot of those objections will be gone.
Are you talking quick wins from like the roadmap? Like
I have
just
quick wins
different
for
things?
anything.
Okay.
What a quick win is it's how they view it. number one, because what I think is a quick win and they don't see as a quick win isn't really a win. So, quick wins would be, this risk right here is, if it's in the information security consulting piece or the vCISO piece, we feel really uncomfortable with this risk, or we just had a breach, or we just had, whatever. Being able to solve those things quickly without large time commitments, without large money commitments, where I can demonstrate value. So if I can move like an S2 score from 479 to 529 with no money, just write this policy, implement this policy. It solves all these things. That's a huge quick win. And then I make sure that I'm keeping track of those and that I point those things out so that these become deposits in the credibility account.
How do you find those? Like, there's the examples that you shared that are kind of like, they're dependent on them. Okay, so they ask you a question and you have an answer, or there's some sort of situation that you're able to showcase something. There's those, but like, what if you're having a tough time finding those to naturally come up? Is there any way that you can kind of manufacture and like little wins without sounding like braggy? Like instead of like saying, "Oh, let me tell you my resume quick,"
Right. I think the more tangible they are, the better. I think they have to see it that, whatever. That's why the relationship is just so really important. I take it to my home. If I do these things, like if I do this work around the house, man, so many brownie points. My wife, quick wins. Then when I go and ask for that motorcycle, it's going to be like, yeah, you earned it. So same thing, with the information security, you're doing the risk assessment. When you're doing that information security risk assessment, there's lots of quick wins, like I said, that you don't even notice you're making, where you're building credibility with them all along the way. By answering their questions, by being personable, by being likable, just all those things. And then you can manufacture some things. I think I would, if I were going to, this is probably a slippery slope though. I would ask them what they think are the quick wins. Like, what things bother you about all of this? That's why I like the road mapping piece, because when you're going through the risk decision making, they can tell me what those quick wins are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that thought, because it made me think that, like, if you are having a tough time having it kind of naturally come up, and no one really wants to have someone come in and just start listing why they're so great and all that stuff. Like, I think it does come down to shifting it to them. I think because sometimes you're nervous, you go into a situation, I want to be liked in this situation. I want to come across credible. And then you end up, if you're so nervous, you end up maybe doing all the wrong things that don't showcase those things, when maybe just a quick shift in your mind saying, hold on, I'm focused too much on me right now. It's time for me to start asking them questions. They're not asking me questions that are, grapefruits for me to hit out of the park. So I need to start asking them questions. That's kind of where I got out of that.
Good point. That's a really good point. And there's we do a lot of posturing in our industry, right? There's a lot of ego in this industry. And it's a fine line between establishing credibility and stroking your own ego. Being able to read the room, like, I give you enough to where I'm credible, and then I stop. I don't need to keep going about, well, I wrote a book and I didn't see, the CvCISO mentor program and whatever. It's all irrelevant. So if you want to know one of the best ways to learn where that line is, I like going into meetings where they don't know me. They've never heard of me before. That's great, because we're on even footing. You're not viewing me as like this guy who did all these things. And then as we're talking, we're learning, right? And then you get to that point where, okay, yeah, you do know what you're talking about, then stop. Because when you go past that and you start really stroking that ego, well, now you're taking money out of the likability bucket. Nobody likes him. Egotist, narcissist, I don't think. No,
Right.
Nobody does. So
that's that whole
credibility, quick wins. Yeah, right. It totally is. And I've counted myself doing that lots of times. I think, lots of times I've had conversations with people that I kind of regretted that I postured as much as I did. I should have just done up. Yeah, because then I come off like I'm a jackass. I know everything. Nobody's going to want that. So I'm going to go through these last ones because we're running out of time real quick. But some of these we've already sort of hit on. Number 7 was it's not was yet because I didn't say it yet. But when I say it, it becomes a was. It's an is now. Then it becomes a was.
What is?
So the is. Was it? Number 7 is anticipate objections early. We touched on that. Some people are quicker on their feet than others. Some people can come up with things to support whatever it is they're trying to support quicker than other people. But it always helps to anticipate what objections you're going to have so you can have your case ready. Number 8 is use emotional intelligence. This is not the least emotion, the better. To the point, I mean, you don't want to be like totally cold, because if it's just strictly logic, then there's no empathy and people don't like you for that either. A lot of people don't like me. I just realized that.
I don't think
that's so emotional for me.
I don't think that's true at
all. Wasn't supposed to be so emotional, Meg. Like me. Kidding.
Well,
all right. So 8 is emotional
next
intelligence.
Week is my topic, so we're going to dive into that more.
Yeah,
right. Maybe a council session for Evan.
Who likes? Why do people like Evan?
Just like Evan. That'd be more fun.
And I'll put together read off the list of all the reasons people don't like you, and see if we.
Let's put that in ChatGPT.
You should tap it. You should ask my wife first for a list.
Yeah.
And then you can. That's a good core list that you guys can build off of. Yeah. So yeah, 8 is emotional intelligence, and I'll make this. I'll put this into a document, Meg, and I don't know. Maybe we put it in the community so people can
definitely
have it.
Yeah, it's good
I
stuff.
can put it in the newsletter.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I've always run into and been. I guess I never really sat down and thought about how to navigate these things. So I think this is a fairly good list. And if people have something to add to it, it belongs to the community, so they can do that.
Right.
Number 9 is focus on long-term gains, not short-term cost.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I don't know if you realize this, like when you talk to people, like even, I keep going back to I'm not asking for a new motorcycle, I don't think, but I keep going to that example. People always question whether they do it like consciously or not. They always question what's in it for me. What's in it for me? I make this decision, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to make more money? Am I going to get a promotion? How do I fit in this? And so the short-term cost will produce what for long-term gain? Putting it into their perspective, it goes a long way. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10, this is one of my favorites, is engage champions and allies within the organization. So it depends on, where you're starting your relationship. But a lot of times as a vCISO, you might get hired and you're interfacing with the CIO, or you're interfacing with an IT director, or, it's probably going to be in an IT bucket for most small to mid-sized businesses, unless, the owner's involved. And during the assessment, I want to make them a champion. I want to make them an ally. I want them to understand, because like think of it's IT, for instance, MSPs are sometimes reluctant to do information security risk assessments because they're afraid that, well, they're going to find out I'm not doing all these things that they thought I was doing, or it's going to make me look bad. Well, no, it's not. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to make you look like a damn champion. I'm here to make all those things that you were telling them that you needed from management all these years of your relationship. I want to support that. I want to make that happen. Whatever you need to do to make the people you're working with an ally. And again, they're asking themselves, what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. As an MSP, what's in it for me? Well, let me make this customer, as long as you're not truly incompetent and a bad MSP, if you are that, then yes, that you are going to look bad. You're not, I hope. So,
well, the best
and I also like committees.
The tip that I would give to any MSPs listening is, even if you are doing a poor job, and you kind of know it. You had the best of intentions, but you just never got around to getting everything the way that you know it should be or whatever. The best thing you can do is just, I mean, they're either going to bring someone to assess and then you'll have to answer to it. I would say take that step yourself and tell your clients, like, I just want you to know that we're not doing everything that we think should be done, and we want to assess ourselves for what it's worth. And we're going to tell you everything that's happening. Like, the best way would be for you to bring it up yourself. And sometimes it's the client falsely thought you should be doing something that was never really a part of what you were doing. And sometimes you just weren't doing it. And I think honesty is always the best. And if they don't want to continue business with you, at least you leave there with credibility and trust still, potentially.
Right. Well, the MSP, should look at this as creating champions and allies as well. Right. So if I'm brought in as, your vCISO and you're the MSP, the sooner we can align, the sooner we can get into agreement with what we're here for, the better. It will make you look better. It will make me look better, make my job easier, make your job easier. Because one of the things that a lot of MSPs are missing is that perspective. They've been treating it based on what the customer thought and based on kind of where they specialize, treating it as it's an IT issue. Mm-hmm. Where most of your risks are probably, they are human related. So you have no governance, you have no risk management. You lack this complete wrapper around all the work that the MSP is doing. The MSP, if they approach it that way, what a great opportunity for them to expand their horizons, provide better service, just all these things. Mm-hmm. And I also like committees. So when as a vCISO, if it's an organization that can support a committee, depending on its size and its makeup, I like organizing a committee. And within that committee, we're working on risk management, we're working on risk decision making, we're working on governance, we're working on, all these risk decisions in that committee. And then I go and present that to the board of directors or the CEO. But knowing they know all that stuff is behind it, there's a lot less objection. Because the business is spoken. This committee is made of the business. I just lead the committee. So a lot less objection going up, but then also a lot less objection going down, because once those risk decisions have been approved and I've got a budget, I go to implementation. I've got all these champions and allies going to the second part of the job too. So the first part, consulting to make those good risk decisions, and the second part, implementation. Man, it all flows through the committee and makes my life a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. That's the other thing I was thinking about was having outside perspective. And I know when I was a security analyst, we were creating a committee, and we had outside perspective was a part of the committee. So they found people outside of the organization that had information security experience, and they were on the committee consulting and advising and participating, and that helps with credibility sometimes. Absolutely. And also helps with different perspectives, keeping things in perspective, so that if you have somebody that's not willing to fund something or make it a priority in the budget, sometimes hearing from people outside of the organization can help.
Amen. You got some wisdom on you right there, Meg.
All right. Hey, take it.
Hey. And number 11, my last tip for overcoming objections is to stay solution oriented, which means stay focused on your own why, your own purpose for making the recommendation that you're making. Stay focused on the solution, as opposed to, it's easy to get distracted if you've done this before. That, I learned this the hard way too. I start why did I hear it in the first place? I can't remember what recommendation I was actually making anymore. So staying focused, documenting it, that'll help.
Nice.
So those are my 11 recommendations for overcoming objections.
Wonderful.
All right, now I want to bring
another thing
up
I've got a game coming up, and I don't know if you guys will have to help me come up with a better name for the game. The name of the game is called Acronym Asshat.
Acronym Asshat?
Acronym Asshat. Asshat. Yep. And I'll send you guys the rules for the game. We've got like 3 weeks before. And maybe you need to come up with, maybe Asshat isn't an appropriate name for some people, but come up with a different name. But acronym Asshat is...
Tell us what it stands for.
Well, acronyms. So we use a lot of acronyms in our industry. And
right, but what is Asshat?
I call people who overuse acronyms, that are always throwing around acronyms left and right, blah, blah, blah. Those are acronym Asshat.
And so how in the game, we have to identify the Asshat in the room?
No. So the game is the winner of the game is the acronym Asshat. So it's a little bit weird. You actually want to become the acronym Asshat in this game. And the way you play it is we come up with our own list of acronyms, and we go around and we state those acronyms, and then the others guess. And if you guess it, you get a point. There's 2 types of acronyms. They're an F point. And there's 2 types of acronyms that you'll come to podcast with. One is a list of acronyms that are legitimate information security acronyms, right? They actually stand for something that you didn't just make up. The second list is acronyms that you make up. You can make them whatever you want, right? And in that second list, if either one of the others gets that one right, they get 2 points for those. So we're going to play this. The first round is, essentially real acronyms in our industry, and then the others guess what they are. The second round, the bonus round, is I have a whole bunch of acronyms that I just either made up or they have nothing to do with information security potentially. It's just an acronym I have. And then if you guys guess it,
like totally made up, it doesn't mean anything. It's intended to be.
It has to. Well, an acronym, each first letter in the word has to be part of the acronym, right? So that has to hold, that rule has to hold true. But yeah, you can actually, I was actually preparing, I was thinking about doing it on this podcast.
You've made up acronyms, you've made up acronyms that you've created, right? But you're saying an acronym that is not, for the second half of the game, the acronym isn't actually true. No?
It could be true, but it's not like an acronym for a security one would be like ZTA, right? Zero Trust Architecture. I may come up with another one that's I just made it up. It's not one that everybody uses and everybody should know, but the other 2 get to guess. Like, I bet you that stands for blah 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 blah, and then if you get it right, you get 2 points.
All right, I think we should play this on our podcast one of these times.
Yeah, we are. This can be my next. So when it's my turn again, we're going to play acronym Asshat, but we have to maybe come up with a better name if people don't like that Asshat name.
I think it's creative.
All right. Well, I'll show you.
Blood hat.
Well, and here, real quick, I'll show you who acronym Asshat is. Actually, there's acronym Asshat.
Oh, that's so funny. Look at you. Nice.
That's acronym Asshat.
All right.
So we'll play that. We'll play that next time.
We're going to do that.
All right. Well, good episode. Hopefully this was valuable for the listeners. If you have questions or want to add something to the list, or you want the list itself, get in touch with us. We'll get you that. If you're part of the community, Meg will post that into the CvCISO community so you can get your own copy. We're always open to challenge. We're always open to ideas. So if you have 1 or 2 that you'd like to add to it or remove from it, let's talk about it. That's what this is all about.
Awesome.
All right.
Bye.
See you next episode.
See ya.
See you next time.